Hi everyone. So just continuing the conversation from my last video, which I will link below, about access to land and being able to find a person's place in the world in order to be able to engage in an ecological design process. So I've been writing about, talking about, teaching about, engaging with people about this idea of mimicking nature and pulling ourselves into greater harmony with the earth in our lives, in our bedrooms, in our kitchens, in our bathrooms, in our gardens, in our communities, at work, as much as we can, right? And and then we learn this skill set, which is a fairly straightforward set of skills. Permaculture design can be learned fairly quickly in terms of the lens through which you see the world and then embark upon an ecological design process. And that can be applied to many aspects of your life. And if you're familiar with my work, you know that I've done a workshop called Emotional Permaculture, designing the inner landscape. And that's just an example of how these ecological design principles can be applied to every layer of our being, because they are applicable, right? Your mind is an ecosystem. It is an ecological landscape in reality. So even if we're just playing with the theory and playing with these ideas and writing and thinking about these things, we're growing ever closer to understanding how to fully integrate ourselves with the natural world for the purpose of perhaps maybe surviving as a species on this planet in the long term. So all of that being said, I wanted to kind of pick up on that topic because there's a lot of directions that we could go with this conversation, and there's been some really amazing response to the last video that I put out, and I'm really interested in this. And the directions that it could go are sort of outward and inward, right? Like, so the outward is in a way, well, outward and inward and in between, let's say, because the outward is, of course, the community and your work and how you put yourself out there. And here we are on social media, no filter, no makeup, whatever. I'm always no filter, no makeup, but that's a whole world, right? There's these pockets of the world that we put ourselves out in order to fit into these different pockets that we relate to or identify with or feel safe in or feel like represent some level of home. And home is that middle ground between the outward and the inward. It's where we actually physically have to exist and sleep and bathe and eat and cuddle and whatever, but and study and work and grow. And so it's this bridge between the outward and the inward, perhaps. And then the inward is, of course, our relationships with ourselves. And in this particular world that we're in right now, the way things have been going with the many, many challenges that almost everyone is coping with on a daily basis, from access to land, or bad soil or bad air or being in the fire zone and getting dumped by your insurance, all the way to absolute, starvation and devastation and desperation, with lots of ups and downs in between. And I'm not saying everything is doom and gloom, but there is a lot of that in the world. And then on the bright side, we grow our flowers and we harvest our fruit and we share what we can, and we try to find that balance, right? But through all of that, it can be really difficult to maintain a healthy and fruitful emotional landscape, can it not? I mean, can I hear an sorry, I dropped my notes, and what I've been eyeing over here is this. I just went through a huge box of journals, right? So from my teenage years all the way to now, and I think I am gonna make a couple of videos where I read you some of these stories I wrote in second grade. They are hilarious. Obviously, I've always wanted to be a writer, and I was. And there's some pretty funny stuff in there. So anyway, that's for another video. But I found these notes from when I was really, really depressed and was in a really, really dark place in my mid-30s, late 30s. Food Not Lawns was published in 2006, and I was 35 when that happened. I had worked on it for several years. I'd been in school. I'd been farming. I'd been activismizing. I was exhausted, and I wasn't doing good self-care or in a balanced relationship, et cetera, and I went to a deep, dark place and sought many forms of therapy, and I ended up doing some therapy, hypnotherapy, with this lovely lady who came very well recommended in Portland, Her name was Shirley Kimmel. I don't know if she's still around, but she helped me a lot. And she was this team. It was her and her husband. Her husband is a neurologist. So she's a hypnotherapist and just a regular therapist, talk therapist. And then her husband is a scientist, a neurologist, brain nerdy guy. And he had written all these books, and they had all these papers that they had done together. And she was all about like getting protein in your brain first thing in the morning so that you can start to change your patterns and behaviors, because a lot of us get stuck in these loops. And you have this idea of who you want to be. Like, it's one thing to design your emotional landscape on paper, but it's something else altogether, isn't it, to follow through on your commitments to yourself on the daily and really make it happen, being the best that you can be. We all want that. Of course we want that. But in the day-to-day, it plays out in many ways. You have children, you have jobs, you have addictions, you have negative self-talk that gets in the way, even if you're not aware of it being there. And through her, I did things like affirmations and lots of journaling. And then, of course, slowly you let those habits slip away sometimes. Lots of yoga. And right now, I am sort of badly off my practice. I've been between houses, totally depressed, like, oh, poor me, I don't have anywhere to really practice. I can't keep up with anything, blah, blah, blah. And I've sort of just the last few weeks been kind of trying to snap myself out of that, of like, get up off the floor and get it done, girl, kind of attitude. And actually somebody said that to me, and I was like, okay, cool. Because I learned actually once upon a time through Shirley Kimmel, this hypnotherapist, that I am susceptible to a strong suggestion. So different types of people are susceptible to different types of suggestions. And that's how this type of therapy works. So she determined that I kind of need to be told what to do by myself or someone else. I'm really into making like hard and fast decisions, black and white, and that's just how I approach things. Whether that's right or wrong is of no consequence. And she had made these notes based on things that I told her in conversation, and then based on conversations that we had when I was like in the trance. And I found it really provocative for two reasons. Partially because some of the diagrams that she made and the way that we were sort of mapping my relationship with myself, it looked a lot like that, like permaculture ethics triad: care of the earth, care of the people, limits to growth and consumption, distribute the surplus, consider equity, parity. I mean, different ways that you want to phrase that, right? Fair shares. This map that she made of my mind is like me feeling like I need to care for humanity. Like, I have this idea, I guess, since I couldn't fix my family, I have to like fix the whole species, I have to save everybody, which is absurd. Of course, that's just like massive version of codependency. None of us is gonna single-handedly save the planet. Not like I think I'm gonna superhuman it, but this tendency, this activist inclination, this whole sustainability movement, one could argue, is founded in this like codependent desperation to save what we cannot control. And so how do we harness that energy into something productive instead of going down that codependent angle? So that was there. And then the, care for the earth. I mean, sometimes I don't even care about the people. I'm sure we all feel that. We look and we think, oh, maybe the earth will be fine once the people are gone. But, that's definitely not like the preferable option for humanity. Obviously, it would be more productive for us to figure out how we're going to make this all happen and start to learn how to treat each other and how to treat the other species, so that we can have an all-species design that functions cooperatively in perpetuity. And then, then the third thing about limiting and sharing and pushing the surplus out into the community is like, that's just such a core part of my worldview. But it's also important when I'm looking at my emotional landscape that I think about why. Is that a core part of my worldview because I feel guilty or ashamed or obligated? Or is it based on a true and fundamental connection to, Lady Gaia? So that's the conversation that I wanted to sort of mention. That's the many directions I was sort of thinking about sending this conversation. If you find that provocative at all, if you have any commentary about hypnotherapy, if you've had some, this is one more thing I wanted to share about it. This was also really sort of sad, and this is a vulnerable moment I'm going to have with you right now. She made some notes about like my distorted thinking, like what, because of whatever I experienced when I was young or just in my life, I created these internal languages about what I think is wrong with me, right? And oddly, and I had mentioned, a lot of you had responded in the last video to me getting sort of very aggressively doxxed and bullied on social media because of my opinions around, because of my opinions around ecological design education being accessible to people of all classes. Sounds so weird saying it. That's not the only reason I got bullied. I mean, I definitely tried to stand up for myself, and that was a mistake. I probably should have just like ignored them from the beginning. Anyway, circling back, they really picked at these things about me, which I also feel the most vulnerable about, right? Like, I think I'm fat, and they body shamed me. They posted pictures of me and made fun of my body. Or I think I'm not working hard enough and not producing enough, and they consistently told me I was irrelevant. That was like always the word that came up in these hate mails. That's how I kind of knew it was the same group of people, honestly, because they would sort of, it was like verbatim. They would send these different versions of the same thing. It was odd. Anyway, I think I'm pushy. I think I talk too much. I think that I can't commit, and that was the stuff. And so that's interesting, right? But then what are the flip sides of that? Like, okay, so I'm chubby. Does that mean that I would like maybe survive longer without food? I don't know. I'm really strong. Maybe I'm not even, maybe why am I body shaming myself anyway? Like, am I going to spend my whole life doing that, or just most of my life, because this is the culture that we grew up in, especially, I mean, I'm Generation X, and I grew up spent a lot of time in Southern California during my like teenage formative years, and definitely developed a strong, like, you're too fat, devil on my shoulder. And I think that a lot of us relate to that. And that doesn't just go away because we are now interested in ecological design. It actually becomes a part of the whole process, because if we're talking about building community and feeling safe and being inclusive, we have to think about all of these different things. We have to be aware of these ways in which we just talk crap to ourselves, so that we can catch ourselves when we start mimicking that behavior towards others, and B, also catch ourselves when we're interfering with our own relationship with nature and talking ourselves out of doing really cool projects because of that imposter syndrome, or thinking we're not worthy, or thinking that our work is irrelevant. Nobody's work is irrelevant. It's so absurd. It's such a dumb thing to say. It's kind of like, oh, your eyebrows are too close together. I mean, it's just like, I don't know why I took that to heart, honestly, but people say things like that, and then it pushes a button, and you don't realize the button has been pushed. And so I'm bringing it back around to ecological design, to emotional permaculture, to my sort of milieu. And I'm going to post a link to this. This is a new video I'm going to put up on the first page of that old course. And if you took that course, then I'd love to get some more feedback about it. I'd love to update it and add on to it, because the topic is really, really interesting to me. And if you haven't taken it, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's free. It's donation based. I do consistently get people still signing up for it, and it is maybe even just more relevant now than ever, because the world is sort of getting harder and harder to live in for a lot of people. So anyway, that's my weekly post. I'm going to try to keep up with these and just kind of vlogging about what's going on with me, and trying to connect that to what's going on with you, in the hopes of all of us building more community together. Please check the comments I'm going to be posting this on YouTube and sending it out via email and post on my blog and stuff. So just check below for links to the stuff I mentioned, the courses and the last week's video, and sign up for my email list. We have free forums that don't have any ads or don't do any data mining. Trying to kind of just carve out a little niche of the internet that is safe and productive and happy and entertaining and just lovely for folks who want to learn more about how to take care of the earth and themselves. Okay, bye.